this week's chapter of Bleach, Aizen shocks all of the Shinigami and the Quincy with his extreme power to nearly destroy the Soul King's palace, all just by sitting in a chair. This week's chapter also had a very nice twist where we get to see that some of the Quincy are going to be returning, and it looks like they're actually going to be rebelling against the Quincy leader and trying to kill him for all of the destruction he has caused, and for the fact that he basically just threw his comrades to the wayside. This means we're going to see the return of Bazby, the burning finger badass with a mohawk. We're also going to get to see Giselle Jewel, the master of zombies, and Lil Toto Lampert, who is that one little creepy girl who can turn her mouth into a freaking giant pocket space of death. This week's chapter was pretty interesting. Again, not really too much happened. Really, it was all defined by the final couple pages of this week's chapter, but I really love the developments there. I'm really glad that we're going to get to see a little bit more of these Quincy characters, and I love even more the fact that they are going to have to reluctantly team up with the Shinigami in order to actually fight against Juha Bach, Ewok, the Quincy leader, whatever you want to call him. I think it's going to be pretty freaking exciting. I also like that we got to see the return of Nananaja Coop. I thought that was really awesome. He's a very interesting Quincy. Just his overall design is ridiculous, and he was the one who was actually trying to kill Aizen this week by repeatedly firing arrows at him, trying to find like the chink in his armor, but it wasn't happening whatsoever, and I love the fact that Aizen almost seemed like he was bored by these attacks that were constantly flying at him. He wasn't even getting close to getting knocked out. And that's when Bazby just sort of shows up out of nowhere and ends up stabbing him from behind with his burning finger of death. I also enjoyed the dialogue between Koratsuchi and Aizen this week. I thought it was really good because they are very pompous characters who are very high on themselves, and I just love to see them sort of compete with each other. Overall, though, that's pretty much it. Aizen's hanging out in a chair, and the Quincy are going to be helping out the Shinigami. That was pretty much the gist of this week's chapter. I guess we can all assume that Ichigo and his friends are still falling out of the sky randomly, and there's a few other battles going on that they don't want to get to quite yet. So what's the rundown on this week's chapter of Bleach? Is okay. Obviously, the biggest twist about this one is the fact that the Quincy are going to be teaming up with the Shinigami to go up against the Quincy leader. I think that is really cool, and I think they did a good decision in choosing these characters, and they're the ones that are slightly more popular, I think. You know, I always thought that Bazby was sort of like the Grimjow of this arc, if you know what I mean. He kind of reminds me of that character, except that obviously he's on the Quincy side. That and his powers, I think, are really cool. But then, of course, the oddballs, which are Giselle Jewel and Lil Toto. I had never even imagined that they were going to return, much less actually helping out the Shinigami. And, you know, it does make sense, but they do have some pretty messed up powers too, so I can't wait to see how that's actually going to come into play, if they're going to end up actually trying to literally fight against him, or they're going to actually fight against his royal guard. There's a lot of possibilities for battle setups in this week's chapter, and it can really go into any direction at this point. There's a lot of different wild cards in this final arc, Aizen just being one of them, but just the fact that they haven't even gotten back to some of the other big characters yet, and there's still a lot of teases. There's a lot of surprises, I think, left in this final arc of Bleach. What I will say is, this chapter right here was okay. Really, it's all about that twist at the end with the Quincy getting ready to join the Shinigami. That's really my favorite part about this week's chapter. The first couple pages was just more of Aizen demonstrating his power with all of the giant Reiatsu erupting from his body, all contained within a certain space around the chair. That's the whole point of his restraints, is that he can still use a little bit of his power, but only right around him. So as long as you don't get close to him, you're going to be okay. And that's mostly just to try and contain everything that's within his body. The Hogyoku, all that stuff, he's a freaking insane monster of pure destruction, and that's why they have to keep him tied down. The only way they'd be able to actually stop his Reiatsu is if they can actually stop his heart. That's actually something that was brought up in this week's chapter, just another minor revelation about the series, but it's still some pretty important stuff. The artwork was pretty good this week, and there was a little bit of action at the end, which I thought was pretty cool. So this was still a pretty fun chapter of Bleach, but it didn't quite blow me away. I'm still waiting for that big chapter to come in where Ichigo is just going to start messing shit up, and we're really going to start getting to the battling, and maybe a little more explanation behind really what's going on with the whole Soul King and the Quincy leader. So this was still a good chapter to me. I still really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fan-favorite characters, and I was really glad to see the Quincy's return. So I'm going to give this week's chapter a 4 out of 5. A pretty damn solid chapter that you should definitely check out if you're a Bleach fan. I know I did, and I loved it. So check it out, guys. pretty good one. Thank you guys for watching my review. Before you guys leave, make sure to tell me what you thought about this week's chapter of Bleach. Now that the Quincy are joining the Shinigami, what do you think is going to happen in this final arc? What battles are you looking forward to, and what do you hope to see? Make sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. That way you can see all of our latest anime and manga reviews, of which we are doing a lot. You should also follow us on social media like Facebook and on Twitter. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby.